advantage of the highest guarantees I've seen in my career. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600. Or visit us online at TrajanWealth.com.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
What was that?
That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud Phone System. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm? I am. Ooma has everything I need to run my business more efficiently, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business calm at ooma.com/radio.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
None of these 7 people scored the winning touchdown in last year's championship game. None have gone into space or gone on tour with Taylor Swift. Yet 7 special people in the community deserve your attention. And September 7th at the Utah Valley Convention Center, starting at 6 p.m., you can give it to them. Join Community Action Services and Food Bank in celebrating the contributions of 7 extraordinary members of the community. Then see the premiere of the Food and More store, a pop-up giving experience you can only experience at this event. Plus, you'll have the chance to peek inside their new mobile food pantry. Dinner, live music, entertainment. Get details now on how you can be a part of this exceptional community night. Visit casfb.org and learn more about the evening, the individuals being honored, and how to be there to take it all in. casfb.org. Community Action Services and Food Bank, providing food and more to neighbors in need in Wasatch, Summit, and Utah counties.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Mark Christiansen.
The only big problem still in the clearing stages is that accident if you're headed northbound on Bangalore, just about 2200 south prior to the 201. They're still taking up the right lane, and traffic is backing in several blocks behind that. Looks like they're getting things close to clearing up, but it'll take us at least another 10-15 minutes before they move those cones. The UACPA supports certified public accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development. Find a CPA that works for you. UACPA.org. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Partly cloudy skies with a high of 90 and a chance for thunderstorms this afternoon and evening. Drier and cooler tomorrow and Thursday. Right now, partly cloudy and breezy. I'm Dan Bonas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Over the weekend, further tragedy came to light as Israel and the Israeli Defense Force discovered the bodies of 6 of the hostages, including the body of an Israeli American that had been held by Hamas. This has turned into widespread protests against the Netanyahu government across Israel, who are pushing for the hostage deal to finally take place. Many things happening on the national and the international space. And we want to get past the headlines and look at what it all actually means, what the path forward is. So let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, things are going to continue to get more complicated, not less complicated in the Middle East. And we're going to break this down in 2 parts today. First, we're going to start with some of the practical tacticals in terms of the geopolitics of it all and what that means both for Benjamin Netanyahu, what it means for the Palestinians and those in Gaza, as well as the region, and as well as other partners and allies and enemies from around the world. And then coming up at 1:20, we'll be joined by Rabbi Avremi Zippel, who will join us as we talk about the individuals, the very personal side of all of this, the families of the hostages, both those whose lives have been lost, those that are still being held against their will. And so we start with some really important analysis from Mary Trimble, editor of the Morning Dispatch, based in Washington, D.C. And Mary, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Boyd.
So let's start with just kind of the lay of the land just a little bit in terms of what is happening there. What did we learn in particular over the circumstances of the deaths of these hostages, rules of engagement, what seems to be going on with the Hamas fighters? Give us a little lay of the land there.
Sure. So over the weekend, the world learned that 6 of the remaining hostages in Gaza held by Hamas had been found dead in a tunnel underneath Rafah, which is the southernmost city in Gaza. And so these 6 hostages, most of them all but one had been taken from the Nova Music Festival. They were found executed, and the Israeli Health Ministry assessed that they had been executed between 48 and 72 hours before the IDF found them in this tunnel. And so what that suggested, and indeed what the head of the Al-Qassam Brigade, the military wing of Hamas, seemed to confirm yesterday, was that actually this was a new policy for Hamas, that after hostages were successfully rescued in June by the IDF in a really daring mission, that the new policy was, as IDF forces moved on a Hamas position where hostages were, that Hamas was to execute those hostages.
Yeah, that's definitely a change in the dynamic there. And, of course, that changes both the calculation in terms of future potential rescues. It also changes the negotiating in terms of getting to peace and getting hostages back. A lot of things happening inside of Israel. Give us a sense in terms of the domestic pressure. Obviously, some pretty significant rallies and protests taking place over the weekend. Give us a sense from the Israeli side.
Sure. So protests against the Israeli government have been ongoing since the beginning of this war, and indeed since before the war started for other reasons. But I was talking to a source on the ground in Israel who said this is different. These protests, there have been protests demanding the release of the hostages. There was even, I covered the Benjamin Netanyahu's address to a joint session of Congress here in the U.S. And in fact, one of the siblings of a hostage that was executed over the weekend was in the chamber and stood up in a silent protest wearing a shirt demanding that Netanyahu agree to a hostage deal. So this is ongoing, but this weekend seems to set off something different, something more visceral. The source pointed out to me that these are Israelis know the hostages' faces, they know their names, and so this is really a grief-stricken country who has heard the sort of mood music about this hostage deal being close to being finished for many weeks. And so there's just this sense of tragedy and grief in these protests. And many of these protesters lay all of this at Benjamin Netanyahu's feet. They argue that this is cynical on his part, that he knows that agreeing to a deal would potentially topple his government. There are some factions in his government that are against a deal that would see hostages exchanged for what would eventually become a permanent ceasefire. And so these factions believe that Israel should keep fighting and should keep fighting to the end. And so those factions have threatened to topple his government, and it seems likely that Netanyahu would not win the premiership again. And so that is at play for some of these protesters who think that is why he has not agreed to a ceasefire. But it's also worth pointing out that since May, when President Joe Biden proposed what is sort of the working framework at this moment, this 3-phase deal that would see Hamas-held hostages exchanged for prisoners, many of whom are terrorist criminals, Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel as part of a temporary ceasefire that would eventually give way to a permanent ceasefire. The Netanyahu government has agreed to seemingly every stage of this. And so there are a few sticking points that Netanyahu is refusing to give up. But, Hamas has not agreed to any of these stages and does not seem willing, the new political head of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, does not seem willing to agree to a deal. So, it's without certain concessions from Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, and it does seem that everyone's at the table except for Hamas at this point, which makes it hard to actually negotiate on some of those particulars. And it is important to note, what has been agreed to or what seems to be part of a deal. It seems to be there. And to me, it does point to some of the distrust inside of Israel. You mentioned some of the protests that took place before October the 7th relating to the Netanyahu government, some of the things that were being done around the judiciary and consolidation of power. And to me, that trust factor, I think, is such a big part of all of this. As you look at it going forward, Mary, kind of underneath the headlines, anything that you're watching for in the days ahead that may give us some indication that either the right levels are getting pulled and tweaked a little bit and there's a path, or that we're just going to be in this hunker down mode for a little bit longer?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to say whether this weekend really ultimately changed the calculation for either side. I think we're not seeing a lot of indication that Hamas is ready to give up. And Netanyahu is facing pressure from his own defense minister, from Benny Gantz, to give up on certain of these concessions. But we'll just have to wait and see. And I would say there are this is obviously a very complicated negotiation, but there are also things happening sort of in the background, right? So there's the ongoing threat from Iran, this potential retaliation for what Israel has not accepted has not admitted that they had assassinated the former political head of Hamas in Tehran, though it's generally accepted that they did so. Tehran has threatened to retaliate, and that has not happened yet. It's unclear whether they will. Things are also getting fairly hot in the West Bank. And obviously there's this ongoing threat from Hezbollah in the north. So, as important and crucial as the ceasefire negotiation is, and as crucial as it is to bring hostages home, that there's so much going on in this region, and Israel is really fighting a multi-front war and preparing to fight on many fronts.
Great perspective, as always. Mary Trimble, editor of The Morning Dispatch. It's where you should start your morning. It is where I start mine. Mary, thanks so much for joining us. Great perspective. We'll continue to watch this unfold in the days ahead.
Thanks, Boyd.
All right, that's Mary Trimble from The Morning Dispatch, and it is a perfect place to start your day. It gives you all the proper framing and perspective for all the big issues of the day. And so as Mary broke that down, again, there's a lot of things going on in the region. It isn't just what is happening between Israel and Hamas inside of Gaza. As important as those hostages are, that's got to be front and center, especially recognizing that there are American hostages among those. And so we're going to stay with this conversation a little bit. There's a lot of geopolitical. That's going to be really complicated. It's going to take a long time to kind of tease all of that out. But the one thing that we know, and the things that we understand for sure, is humanity and human dignity. And so we're going to stay with the conversation. We'll be joined by Rabbi Avrami Zippel coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Finally. September. Things are finally going to get back to normal.
We are one step closer to having a section of downtown Salt Lake City transformed.
Utah Senate Democrats say there's no need for the special session.
The air quality is hazy and unhealthy for all groups.
They say it's not true. There's no ticket quota.
Since when is there a normal anyway? We're tracking these stories to keep you updated on key developments. Listen each day this week to KSL News Radio.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa this weekend only. Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandswimspasale.com.
Hello, it's Congressman Blakemore here. It's my honor to represent the men and women at Hill Air Force Base and advocate for Northern Utah's defense community. This year, I was grateful to secure several wins for Hill in the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025, including a pay raise for junior uniformed airmen, authorization for 2 military construction projects, and full funding for the Sentinel program, which will provide thousands of Utah jobs, modernize our ground-based intercontinental ballistic missile program, and usher in a new era of nuclear deterrence. My bill, called the Retain Skilled Veterans Act, was also included in the NDAA to remove the arbitrary 180-day waiting period for veterans who are seeking to transition to civilian service at the DoD after their time in uniform. My team and I are working hard, coordinating with Hill Air Force Base leadership and finding solutions to their needs and challenges. It's an honor to serve those who serve our nation, and I encourage all our service members and veterans to reach out at blakemore.house.gov if we can be assistance to you. Paid for with official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
It is back to school time and a great time for you to set a good example for your kids.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to myself here too, because for years I used to eat, I was just addicted to chips and all kinds of other things that kept 40 extra pounds on me for most of my adult life. But then I started Soda Weight Loss, and I showed my kids you can eat healthy and still be happy, still eat the foods you like and lose weight and be healthier. This is Nick.
If you stick with this program, I promise you will lose weight. And this is coming from somebody that I couldn't even barely walk when I started this. How many pounds I was carrying was hurting my knees and my back. I have to say that I'm a true believer of this.
I'm a true believer too, Tim.
Yeah, and so is my daughter who lost 42 pounds. It's so much more, and how many times have we said this, than just those numbers on the scale. The weight really keeps you from doing the things you want to do in life, and you're not as hungry either. Go to sodaweightloss.com right now. Click on the Request a Nutritionist callback, and within minutes, they'll be on the phone to get you started. Sodaweightloss.com, spelled S-O-T-A, and it stands for State of the
Art.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, an 8-year-old boy died this morning after accidentally shooting himself yesterday in Lehigh. Second, a boat with 9 people aboard crashed into a wall along the Connecticut River yesterday. At least one person died, 2 are still missing. And third, one of the biggest mineral extraction companies in the state has reached an agreement to minimize its impact on the Great Salt Lake. 86 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. We're staying with the conversation as it relates to the hostages, the tragedy of the news we got over the weekend that 6 additional hostages had been killed by Hamas, that their bodies were recovered by Israeli forces over the weekend. And, of course, one of those was Ori Danino. His mother had been here in Utah just about a month ago, and Rabbi Avrami Zippel joins us in studio. He was part of creating that event and her telling that amazing story of her son who wasn't content just to get his own safety secured, but actually went back. And ultimately that has cost him his life.
Yeah, we heard this. I had heard the story in the lead up to the event, and hearing it live and in person had such a profound impact. 24-year-old on a brief military break, lover of music, went down to a music festival. As I've never been to a music festival, but as one does, got to know people in the middle of the night at a certain state of being, and came down with a car, got a number of folks out to safety. To be perfectly clear, had left the Nova Festival, had left the carnage, left it all behind, got a text from a brother and sister, Mia and Itai Shchem, who are from the more well-known recovered hostages at this point, that they were still there and wondering if anybody could get them out. Fully aware of the ramifications of his actions, got back in the car and drove back to the site of a terror attack where there were teeming with terrorists, open fire, got them in the car, I believe got maybe 10, 15 minutes away from the site. They took fire. The car obviously was not operational anymore, and they were all taken into Gaza. Mia and Itai were released in the first round of hostage swaps back in November, and Mrs. Einav Danino made it her life's mission to raise awareness for her son's plight. She was here in Park City, as you mentioned, just about a month ago, and on Saturday night we were notified that his body had been one of those that had been recovered by the IDF in the Gaza Strip, and I'll really kind of walk you through the journey of the personal feelings that happened around it. To be honest, since Einav was here, anytime there was news about the hostages, it took on a personal feel for so many of us. There was a name that meant so much to us, so much to so many of us. All of a sudden, and there had been a group of 6 that I believe a lot of intelligence had known for a while that the 6 of them were being held together, and there were unconfirmed rumors and unsubstantiated rumors, and ultimately his name was released as one of the 6 who had been released. And I got to be honest with you, Boyd, I think when initially hearing that he was confirmed deceased, part of me hoped that it had happened a long time ago. Over the past few months, as the IDF has been recovering some of these bodies, they have very openly said that some of the bodies that they have recovered were of folks who died on October 7th or 8th or 9th or in the days shortly thereafter. And you kind of have this hope and the sentiment that he hadn't suffered much. It had been quick and painless. And they were going to bring his body back to his family for its final respects. About 45 minutes after his identity was confirmed with those of the other 5, news got out that initial investigation of the bodies found that they had been murdered within 48 hours of the recovery. So to be perfectly clear, when Einav was here in Park City a month ago, her son was very much alive, and her son had been very much alive through the end of last week, had survived close to 11 months in captivity, only to be executed point blank, 2 to the back of the head, as there was a perception that the IDF forces were closing in and coming very close to rescuing some of these hostages. And I think for a lot of us Jews globally, that quickly turned the emotional page from the general sadness and numbness that's become so common to us over the past 11 months to real anger, to real frustration at the current situation that these incredible 4 men and 2 women were alive not long ago, really not long ago, and had been executed as their fate was nearing that day of justice. And it's been a tumultuous 72 hours. A lot of the funerals for all 6 of them were streamed globally, and incredible moments that have come out of all of those funerals, and it's been a tumultuous ride for so many over the past couple of days. Yeah,
when I had that same visceral kind of response of, it wasn't just, it's so easy for us very comfortably here in the U.S. to make those just numbers. It's just numbers and numbers. But then having that personal connection, understanding the story, knowing a member of the family, then suddenly that does become real and personal. And it's not just something that happened on October 7th halfway around the world. Suddenly it's a real personal thing. And I think that's important for all of us. And whether it's in this specific case or in countless other cases around the planet, we have to look at these things one by one. It's impacting a family. It's impacting a community. And until we start to understand that, I think we're going to continue to see history repeat itself. Because we've lost that sense of human dignity and that connection to divinity.
I agree. And I'll kind of keeping that thread going, I would actually kind of pivot away from Ori specifically for a moment. And to your point, I couldn't agree more. For folks who aren't necessarily feeling any sort of proximity to the conflict, a lot of these headlines blur into one another over the past 11 months. And I can think about global conflicts that did not necessarily affect me in a personal way. And this side, that side, dead, more numbers, more or less. But I want to kind of step away from Ori for a moment. Among the 6 dead was Hirsch Goldberg Poland, a hostage whose plight has been really at the forefront of so much of the conversation. And I want to kind of step away from the narrative surrounding the wider war for a second and draw everyone's attention to this headline for a moment. On Thursday, there was a 23-year-old American citizen who was born in Berkeley, California, and was a fan of the Indianapolis Colts and a huge admirer of Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison, who was executed by an internationally recognized terrorist organization. Didn't die, wasn't found dead, was executed, was shot in the back of the head by an internationally recognized terrorist organization. And what are we doing as a nation?
Yeah.
What are we doing as a country? What are we doing as a citizenship? And I think for a lot of us American Jews, this has really been a line in the sand. There's an American who was executed by Hamas not long ago, within the past 4 or 5 days. And it's been, I think, on some level comforting to see some of the conversations that have begun in the wake of that. It does feel different for a lot of people, given the American nature of citizenship and the fact that his family speaks perfect English and all that. And to your point, I think it's encouraged a lot of people to take a closer look at the fact that there are very real human beings that are continuing a war on terror that we as Americans used to be so familiar with and used to feel a certain way about. And it has led to a tremendous outpouring of support and comfort from the local community, and we're grateful for that. And I think that's all you can really hope for in that moment.
Yeah, fantastic perspective, always helping us to think again about what we think we know and connecting all of those dots. Rabbi Ziebel, thank you so much for joining us today. Fantastic perspective.
Thank you, Lloyd.
So many important things that we've got to get to, so many things we've got to rethink in terms of how we approach it and what our job is as individual citizens and as a community and as a country. Of how do we look at each other? What do we do for one another? What are the bonds that tie us and bind us? And do they really bind us? Or have we allowed the politics and the other things that happen on social media to distract us or to fray that fabric a little bit? It's time to get back to remembering. I think that's where this actually all begins. Again, Rabbi Ziebel, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Compass Minerals, which operates on the Great Salt Lake, has agreed to give up some of its water rights in an effort to help protect the lake. State Representative Casey Snyder says conversations between the mineral extractors and the state have been going on for years, and they haven't always been pretty.
The level of heat and the level of complexity of these conversations outpaces anything that we've had in recent memory. And yet, we're shaking hands and we're making a deal that's going to benefit everybody.
The Compass has agreed to give the lake the equivalent of almost 2 full Pineview reservoirs every single year, as the lake is still 5 feet shy of its target healthy level. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The White House says it's putting forward a proposal that could lead now to a ceasefire in Gaza, as well as securing the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas and provide immediate relief for Palestinians. National Security spokesperson Robert Kirby wouldn't get into details of the plan, and he's not calling it a final proposal, as some has described it, but he says it would bring immediate relief and an end to the fighting. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average still sliding down 591 points right now, while the NASDAQ is down 560. And our KSL weather. We've got some breeze and some clouds, but we may not get that thunderstorm. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
It's time to get stronger in your financial future. You do that with Hercules Credit Union. They've been all about growing stronger together since all the way back to 1946. It's in your community. You know them. They know you. You're not just a number or a transaction. You have a relationship. Right now, you can fortify that relationship. You can open up a new checking account. You get $150 into that new account when you get direct deposit. Also, you can open a business account with Hercules, get a free fee-free experience, no minimum balances, no maximum transaction amounts. But as always with our friends at Hercules Credit Union, they're there to guide you forward, to help you create a path that you can have confidence in when it comes to your finances and your financial future. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton. You can also find them online, as always, at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
When might you be buzzed? When you suddenly love everything.
You guys, I love this song. I love these nachos. I love our kickball league. Ugh! I love this guy. What's your name? You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love your car. Is this real leather?
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I have a serious heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM. Some symptoms include being short of breath, feeling tired, or having dizziness or chest pain. I still had symptoms on my beta blocker, so I asked my cardiologist about any treatment advances. It was a breakthrough for me. That's why I'm working with Bristol Myers Squibb to raise awareness about HCM and to help others like me. Talk to your cardiologist today and visit hcmrealtalk.com for more information.
Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb.
Winter is coming, but there's still time to replace those drafty old windows before the cold comes and drives up your heating bill. Just make one call and take advantage of the Advanced Window Products Fall Special. $2,500 off on 10 windows or more, and that's $2,500 off their already low factory direct prices, because at Advanced Window Products, they're the factory. Your windows are built in their facility right here in Salt Lake City. You're buying local, and with their lifetime guarantee, you don't ever have to call some faraway state for help. Advanced Window Products is right here, proudly backing up their work. So make one call, save on your heating bill, and get a rebate from the energy companies. Advanced Window Products offers 0% financing. They can even give you amazing new windows with no money down. And don't forget, $2,500 off their factory direct prices, but you have to call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Mark Christiansen.
Well, just a couple of seconds ago, authorities left the scene of that northbound accident, Bangerter Highway, about 2400 south. Traffic's backed up through the area there. In fact, both directions. Looks pretty crowded now, but you can use the on-ramp to go eastbound 201 now. No other major problems to report. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Partly cloudy skies with a high of 90 today. Chance for thunderstorms this afternoon and evening. Drier and cooler tomorrow and Thursday. We're at 90 degrees right now with partly cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the drug facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the drug facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/drug facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we have been declaring for a long time, every year, every single year, September 30th comes. It always comes, amazingly. Congress doesn't seem to wrap their head around the fact that September 30th always comes, because that is the deadline, of course, when the government is supposed to be funded every year. And yet it seems we continue to have the shutdown, showdown, the continuing resolution, and all of those kinds of things. And this year we have all the added benefits of it being a big presidential election cycle. And so everybody's kind of scrambling and trying to get things done. But that just complicates things in a lot of different ways. Really thrilled to have joining us on the program, Eris Foley, congressional reporter for The Hill. And Eris, welcome back to the show. And there are some things that are going to make this September 30th showdown even a little more complicated than usual.
Right. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with some of the things. And obviously, we're going to end up with some sort of continuing resolution. Just for our listeners, explain what that is and then what kind of continuing resolution we're likely to see this time around.
Right. A continuing resolution, also known as a stopgap bill, is just a temporary measure that keeps funding usually frozen at current levels. So it allows the government to remain funded at the levels that were last hashed out for the current fiscal year, and allows members on both sides time to hash out a larger compromise for the coming fiscal year, which actually begins in October.
Yeah, and so as we look at that and how they are likely to kick that can down the road, there are a lot of ramifications. When you say freezing those spending levels, some people say, oh, well, that's a good thing. It's actually very complicated. If you have a program, for example, that's not working, you can't change it because you haven't appropriated funds for something new or different. And so there are some downsides to that as well. What are some of the other challenging components coming up this September 30th that may cause some interesting haggling towards the end?
Right. I mean, what we're already seeing is growing push in the House GOP conference, particularly among conservatives, to make immigration and voting requirements part of the fight. They are pushing for this bill offered by Representative Chip Roy, dubbed the Save Act, and that would allow for stricter proof of citizenship requirements for voting. It's something that Democrats have come out against, but it's gaining a lot of steam amongst conservatives and definitely has a shot of potentially being in the House GOP's CR when they do roll it out in the coming days.
Okay, so those things definitely will complicate it in terms of who's can actually say, yeah, I'll support that. The SAVE Act in particular in terms of those proof of citizenship in voting will be part of that. You also included in your piece in The Hill today, just talking about the duration of the continuing resolution. We usually just call this the kicking of the can down the road. Sometimes they do it really short. Sometimes they do it a little bit longer. What is your sense from your reporting? Is this going to likely be a short one and that has to be dealt with in a lame duck in November and December after the election? Does it start the new administration, whoever's in the White House, that have to deal with some spending come January?
Right. I mean, it's in a large part it depends on what House Republicans, I think, are even able to unify behind. A lot of House Republicans that are very bullish of Trump's chances of winning back the Oval Office in November would push for a stopgap into next year, right? That kicks the next funding deadline into when they think Trump will be president, and is something that they would hope would allow the next president, if he is elected, more influence over how the government is funded for much of 2025. Also kind of denying Biden another chance at having the Biden administration more influence over that funding process. However, there are some Republicans who also are resisting that push, right? They point to years ago when Trump was in office and how they also did something similar to delay funding, but it didn't have that much of an impact on how funding was hashed out. And you ended up just having new Congress people and Trump signing legislation into law, passing legislation that really wasn't entirely in line with what they wanted, and they didn't really have a big a big chance to even completely modify to the extent to which they want to. So there's definitely different schools of thought, even in the House GOP conference, on this issue.
Yeah, you have to be careful what you wish for. Sometimes you end up getting that. One of the other things that you included in your piece, I'm so glad you included this because it's one that I think in all of these shutdown showdowns that often gets kind of nudged to the side or it gets folded in other things, and that is the funding for the Veteran Affairs organization. Give us a sense in terms of where we are. I know Congress failed to pass some things before they took off for their August recess. Give us a sense of where we are, why those shortfalls, and what Congress really ought to do to get those things corrected.
Right. So, and some senators were pretty mad about this before leaving. After both chambers already began advancing funding legislation for next year, much of the next fiscal year, for the military construction and Veterans Affairs annual funding bill. They were notified by the VA that, the VA needs a little bit more funds than anticipated because, namely the PACT Act and what type of impact that has had on just kind of driving up costs. Like it's been popular. You have a lot more veterans that are becoming enrolled and using the health services. So that's something that the VA has said kind of has led to an increase in cost. The issue with that is they are now staring down what senators say is a late September deadline that's pretty close to the September 30th deadline to pass legislation to plug a roughly $3 billion hole. And they still have another potential shortfall that they have to handle the VA for the next fiscal year. So there's a lot of uncertainty as to how they're going to handle that. And of course, there has been some discussion. I've talked to Senator Bozeman, top Republican on the subcommittee that crafts the annual VA funding bill. And there's been some talk about maybe the prospect of attaching that to a CR, but the CR can be a very contentious point, right, of discussion in both chambers. There was an appetite also to just pass it as a standalone bill, but there's also a lot of scrutiny over this, so it depends.
Yeah, no question. That's going to get complicated, and to me, that's one of those the promises we make to those who put on the uniform, the women and men who do that. We give them what they need when they go out, and we provide them what they need when they come home. Full stop. Got to make sure that all gets buttoned in there as well. As always, Eris Foley, congressional reporter for The Hill. You can check out her piece at thehill.com. And Eris, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Some great perspective there from Eris Foley from The Hill, and we're going to keep saying it because it continues to be true. September 30th always comes, and Congress knows it comes. And it's one of the few duties they have in the Constitution is to fund the government, to go through the appropriations process, to do that work in their committees, to submit it, to vote on it in the House and the Senate, and for the president to sign it into law. That's how you fund the government. And it has never changed. That goalpost has not moved. The only thing that's moved is the will of members on the left and the right to do it, to do the job. And if they're unwilling to do the job they were elected to do, they should have other jobs that they could do. They all could do that. And we could help them do that as voters. Remember, we send back 94.5% of incumbents every election cycle. And so if we're not happy with the work that they are doing, what they did sign up to do, I think that's where it should begin. With every representative in the House, every member of the United States Senate, are you willing to commit to do the work that is the job? And we could get rid of every shutdown, showdown forever and ever. There never should be a threat of a shutdown. Ever, ever, ever. It's that simple. Just do the job. Do the committee work in the spring. That's what the spring is for. Get it all voted on before you go off to recess. Sign it. Get the president to sign it, and you're on your way. This is simple stuff. But sadly, what happens is we continue to play the politics of it all. So we get a shutdown, showdown, and suddenly in a funding bill, we're talking about voters' rights. We're talking about the border. We're talking about Veterans Affairs. We're talking about all the different things, and we're trying to calculate that in the context of a major presidential election cycle. Not to mention that every member of the House is up for re-election, and a third of the Senate is up for re-election. And so who's really minding the store? And who's really looking out for you and for me and for all of us? So we have to get back to that basics. We know September 30th will come. We'll continue to tell you when it is coming, because it will come, and we'll see what Congress does. My guess is they will try to kick this can all the way into the new year and the next administration, but maybe they ended up doing it and we can do this all over again just in time for the holidays. We'll step aside for a quick break. When we come back, more Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This Friday, at the 50, the 40, it's BYU's first away game of the season.
Touchdown, Cougars! Rise and shout!
BYU, Southern Methodist University. Pregame from Dallas starts at 3 with kickoff at 5. Make sure you're listening as you drive home on Utah's legacy home for the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
It's happening at pharmacies all across America. Older Americans keep asking, where are the lower prices on prescription drugs Joe Biden and Kamala Harris keep taking credit for? First, Harris cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, promising to lower drug prices. Then the Biden-Harris administration used the money from Medicare to bankroll their liberal green agenda. That's right. Instead of savings, seniors got a 20% premium increase, restrictions on access to medicine, and fewer cures. Now, liberals want to expand this Biden-Harris scheme that is already hurting seniors. Thankfully, Congressman Blake Moore has always fought to protect Medicare drug coverage. Call him at 202-224-3121. Urge him to keep fighting for affordable drug coverage by opposing H.R. 4895. Paid for by Seniors for Better Care.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
What's better than one win? 3 wins. With Straight Savings, you keep your own phone, get one line for only $25 a month with real unlimited data, and get rewarded with a $200 phone credit after 12 months. It's a win-win-win. Head to Walmart or visit straighttalk.com today. Switch to Straight Talk. Less dollars, more sense. Straight Savings Plan enrollment requires compatible unlocked device and new line of service. Bonus device credit requires 12 months of active service. Offer ends if eligibility requirements are no longer met. Taxes and fees apply. For network management practices, see Straight Talk's terms and conditions.
Tommy! I can't wait for golf this weekend, huh, buddy? Time flies. Love you, man. Oh, don't forget your knee brace again. We aren't in college anymore.
Moments together matter, so help protect yourself from RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV, and there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Do you know why more homeowners choose Any Hour Services for help when it's time to replace their air conditioners? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and the main reasons people choose Any Hour Services is because of our people, processes, and convenience. People tell us all the time that there's just something different about having an Any Hour Services technician in their home. That's why most of our over 18,000 Google reviews mention our technicians by name. Another reason is our 7-step install process that we call the Any Hour Difference. It all starts with a needs analysis where you explain what you like and dislike about your current system. This helps us design and size a system that fits your comfort and efficiency preferences as well as your home's airflow requirements. As for convenience, most of our installs are completed in one day. We also have flexible, no-money-down financing options available, even if you've been told no in the past. So if you've been thinking about getting a new air conditioner, call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate today. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Have you been wanting to find a secret to losing weight and getting healthy the natural way without drugs or injections? At SaltLakeCityFatLoss.com, we know the secret to losing a half a pound to a pound of fat every day naturally, safely, and effectively. Without counting points or calories. No exercising, no prepackaged meals, no hormones, no injections, no drugs or surgery. Go to SaltLakeCityFatLoss.com now.
I'm Dave Noriega, and I joined Salt Lake City Fat Loss 6 months ago. And let me tell you, I have
have absolutely loved the results. I lost 57 pounds in 60 days. Schedule that free consultation. Go to slcfatloss.com. Use my name. You're going to get an extra $200 off the program.
Many clients lose 20 to 30 pounds in about a month or two. That's up to a pound per day. For your free private phone consultation, call 801-450-1882 or go to saltlakecityfatloss.com. Our staff will walk you through our entire program, talk about your health goals, and see if it's a good fit for you. Go to saltlakecityfatloss.com now. Results may vary.
Put the equity in your home to work with a home equity line of credit and get 6.49% APR for the first 6 months. Learn more at cypresscu.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the state has worked out a deal with a major mineral extraction company to help protect the Great Salt Lake. Second, the White House isn't calling it a final plan, but says there is a proposal on the table to end the war in Gaza and get Israeli hostages released. And third, data security experts say scammers could take advantage of changes being made by Apple to its iPhone accounts. 90 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. You know, it's always a fascinating thing for me when we think about the fact that when you ask the American people what they dislike most about government or about Congress, they usually say it's gridlock, that they hate the gridlock, that everything takes too long, there's too much fighting, there's too much back and forth. The amazing thing is we've gotten really good at gridlock in this country, sadly. And so when it comes to the election and Vice President Kamala Harris or former President Donald Trump, it's really interesting. I think they're both banking on gridlock as a strategy to good governance. Now, there was a fantastic piece in the Dispatch by our friend Kevin Williamson. He's a national correspondent there at the Dispatch. And he actually talked about gridlock in kind of an interesting way, because both sides kind of count on it during election season. So you won't hear either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump talking about gridlock being a good thing for them. But it's one of those think again moments. So you got to get underneath the headline of it. And so how are they really looking at gridlock? What are they really counting on when it comes to gridlock? And here's the thing. Gridlock allows you to make crazy promises to your base that you know you will never have to keep. So really interesting. One of the things that Kevin Williamson pointed out in his piece in the Dispatch was that Kamala Harris, she'll never say it out loud. She's not going to say she wants divided government, but she's counting on it. So, of course, she rolled out as part of her economic strategy a couple of weeks ago a big idea for price gouging legislation. So a federal law that would really undermine the best dynamics of supply and demand. And so she can make that claim, and everybody cheers because it's all about the billionaires and the big companies, and they're evil and awful. And so it's a great applause line at a campaign rally. But even people inside of the Kamala Harris camp say she knows it's not going to happen. She knows that price gouging legislation does not have a snowball's chance in Guam of getting through the House and the Senate, even if the Democrats take the House and the Senate. She knows it's not happening because there's enough of a nuance there, and the margins for those majorities in the House and the Senate are not going to be great, whether it's for the Republicans or the Democrats, or if it's divided government, then it doesn't have any kind of chance, zero chance of getting passed and getting to her desk. But in the meantime, she can use that as a great applause line at a campaign rally and use it as a way to convince voters that she's on their side, that she's looking out for them, that she's going to do something that will impact their lives and their world. Now, lest you think this is only a Democratic strategy, Republicans are equally good at this. And many of the things that you hear the former president roll out also have exactly a snowball's chance in Guam of getting done, especially in divided government. And so former President Trump can get the applause lines, can say, I'm going to do this, we're going to pass legislation to do that, and everyone cheers, and the base of the political parties give standing ovations, and they're all excited and motivated and engaged. And they know it's not happening, and they don't have to worry about it. And so there are those in the political consultant complex in our nation's capital who understand that divided government is the easiest way for a politician to put out populist ideas during an election cycle and be honest about it and say, hey, this is what I want to do, knowing full well it's never going to happen. And then if the constituents complain and say, oh, hey, you said you were going to do this, they can shrug their shoulders and say, divided government. If only we had full control of everything, then we could implement these wonderful policies. And so this has become a really big cop-out for both Democrats and Republicans, knowing that the American people seem to like divided government. They like the checks and balances, amazingly, as the founders put them in, as a feature, not a bug. But now there's this element of it that is also becoming political expedience or convenience. It's really a convenience to make big promises you know you can't deliver, and also to know that you already have an alibi built in. You have an excuse. Because all you have to say is divided government. And say, oh, yeah, if only we didn't have that gridlock. And then we all start moaning and complaining about gridlock and divided government, and we forget about what we really want. And so as we enter this fall season, and we'll talk about this a lot coming up in hour number 2, we have to decide what we really want for our country and for our communities. And are we willing to vote for what we want, what we really want? Or are we mostly interested in our team being in power? That's the big question we'll have to decide. We'll get to that in hour number 2. We also have a great conversation coming up with our friend Megan McArdle from the Washington Post coming up at 2:35 on what happens when you just give people $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. Does it change them? Answers are pretty interesting. Stick around. We'll be right back after top of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. The 100 deadliest days on Utah's roads ended with Labor Day, with an increase in fatalities compared to last year. 92 deadly crashes killed 101 people on Utah's roads compared to 81 the year before. That's according to data from the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Transportation. Utah Highway Patrol Lieutenant Cameron Roden says many of those crashes have something in common.
Speed is one of the common factors in a lot of these crashes that turn deadly. With additional speed becomes, additional crash forces that we have to take into effect.
Overall, there were increases in deadly single-occupant, pedestrian, and motorcycle crashes. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. 2 U.S. Marines were attacked by members of an anti-American group, the so-called Turkish Youth Union. It posted video of the assault on social media. More from ABC's Martha Raddatz.
Local police and some other Marines nearby quickly intervened, and the group of attackers was arrested. The Marines were not injured, but taken to the hospital as a precaution, then returned to the ship.
These Marines are based on the USS Wasp. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average still down all day. It's 626 points at this hour. And the NASDAQ down 577, S&P 500 down 119. And our our KSL weather. Looks like sunny and breezy right now, and that's next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
In 2024, dating is a disaster. We've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, stuck in situationships. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Caitlin. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age. Dating has been so dicey for us, we asked KSL, can we launch an all-new podcast about it?
People use these dating apps. You're not really dating when you're on the dating app.
Dating at Her Age, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. A new episode drops every Thursday on KSLNewsRadio.com.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home, and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hello? Hey, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. Did you know we've got you fully covered?
I've taken up beekeeping. I'm always covered.
I'm talking the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage at up to half the cost.
Same honey, half the work?
Exactly.
Sweet.
Just call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Mom, meet Sarah.
From first-time Nana moments.
And welcome to Flight 101.
To annual girls trip moments. Your can't-miss moments are worth protecting against RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV. And there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com.
So where should we go next?
Sponsored by Pfizer.
Every business faces challenges, but complicated, expensive, and uncertain shipping shouldn't be one of them.
With USPS Ground Advantage from the United States Postal Service, you can avoid all the noise.
No more unexpected surcharges, hidden fees, or complex rate structures.
It's just easy, cost-effective, and dependable shipping. Tune your business's frequency to success and turn shipping to your advantage. Learn how at USPS.com/advantage. USPS Ground Advantage. Simple, affordable, reliable.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit NPSstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. NPSstore.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Mark Christiansen.
We've got a 4 or 5 car accident. This will be if you're headed westbound on I-80, just about 800 east. They're both on the left and the right side. So as you come around the corner there, just put on the brakes a little bit. HP headed that direction. Another accident reported just about 106 south on I-15 northbound. I don't see too much of a slowdown through the area there right at the moment. Common Spirit, hospitals, clinics, and caregivers, all connected to advanced healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Well, our forecast high for the day is 90, and that's where we are right now. There is a chance for thunderstorms this afternoon and evening. Drier and cooler tomorrow and Thursday. And right now, 90 degrees with clouds and a little bit of breeze. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, Labor Day has come and gone. The dog days of summer are over. I hope you had a good long weekend. And as we get down the final stretch of the final 60-plus days as we march towards the first Tuesday of November. Campaign staff for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are going to be going full tilt. It'll be a 24/7 adventure from now until November. They're not getting a break until after the election is over. And so this is the final sprint. And so as we start this part of the race and this part of the journey, as we should with every journey, let's start with a real clear perspective of where we actually are. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, this is when it all begins to really get real as we enter the final stretch of the presidential race and a host of other races. You have to keep that in mind as well. Every member of Congress is up for re-election. About a third of the Senate will determine who's in control of the upper chamber, as well as gubernatorial races, state legislative races, mayor, city council, and so on. All of these things are really going to heat up over the next several weeks. And we're going to keep you in tune on all of those. But as it relates to the big national campaign, we want to get a little bit of the lay of the land in terms of where we actually are and what to watch for in the days ahead. That's the best way for you to not have to react to everything that comes at you, all the headlines, all the social media, everything you see on cable news. You can step back and say, oh, I knew that was coming. Oh, I'm not surprised that that's what they're doing now, because you'll know. And so you have to understand where we actually are. And so when it comes to where we actually are, the most ironic thing of all is the fact that just 44 days ago, this was a race between the current president of the United States and the former president of the United States. This was a Joe Biden-Donald Trump battle. And while the Republicans felt they had the wind at their backs coming off of a bad debate performance by President Biden, and a successful Republican National Convention, the polling was still pretty much within the margin of error in all of the key battleground states. So it was still going to be a tight race all the way to the finish. And then, of course, everything changed. About 44 days ago, Joe Biden announced to the nation that he would not seek re-election or be the nominee for the Democrats, and within a stunning 48 hours, Kamala Harris had galvanized the delegates and had been tapped to be the presumptive nominee. And the momentum that came out of that was just stunning and staggering. The amount of money that they brought in as this idea of a campaign that was not Biden-Trump put all kinds of energy into the idea of Kamala Harris for Democrats. And they have ridden that incredibly well. Campaign fundraising has been off the charts. The Democratic Convention did everything they wanted it to do to keep that momentum rolling. And even with all of that momentum, now that we're on the other side of Labor Day and you look at the polls, they're pretty much where they were 44 days ago. But now I think Kamala Harris and the Democrats probably have a little bit more wind at their backs than the Republicans. But the race is still a toss-up in all the battleground states. In every battleground state, it's within the margin of error. And so that's the most important thing to recognize is even after all the tumultuousness of the last 44 days, we're still basically where we were when we started. It's still a really close race in a pretty evenly divided nation. And it's all going to come down to what happens between now and the first Tuesday of November. And so what are the things that are going to happen between now and the first Tuesday of November? Well, the first is going to happen next Tuesday. Next Tuesday will be a debate. It will be hosted by ABC, and it will be the first time that the former president, Donald Trump, and the current vice president, Kamala Harris, will square off on the same stage. I think it will be very telling. Will former President Trump go back to 2016 mindset? Will he be more of an interrupter? Will he be very bombastic on the stage? Or will he demonstrate what he did in his single debate this cycle with Joe Biden? Will he be reserved? Will he be a little more controlled, a little more policy focused than just the bombast. The question for Kamala Harris will be, how does she do in prime time? Not in a sit-down interview, not in a pre-tape, but in a live exercise of democracy, when questions can be answered, follow-ups can be asked, and how does she handle the bright lights and being face-to-face, one-on-one with her political opponent? That's going to be the first and probably most telling moment, I think, of the fall campaign, will be what happens in the debate. And as has been the case on so many things, the way they're preparing is vastly different. Former President Trump is not doing much at all, said he's got it all figured out. He knows what he's going to do. He knows what he's doing. He'll just show up and do the drill. Kamala Harris, I think, is going to spend more time off of the campaign trail. You can see she's sending a lot of surrogates out to these big rallies and events across the country over the next few days as she tries to spend some more time really locking into what is her message, what are her policy proposals, and what are the things that are going to resonate from a debate stage that are a little different from addressing an adoring crowd or standing behind a teleprompter. And I think for both of these candidates, this is a different deal. And I'm also going to be watching very closely, how does ABC handle this? And what does ABC do? Is this a very focused conversation? Is this very broad brush? Everything that happened in the first debate between President Biden and former President Trump, neither one of them really answered any of the questions that were asked. The moderators let them go on whatever they wanted to say. Basically, they were saying, we're going to give you 2 minutes for an answer, go. And they went. And they went in all kinds of ways, even when there were very specific questions. Neither Biden nor Trump were interested in answering the question that was asked. They wanted to say what they wanted to say. And I think if we have some disciplined moderators in a debate who are willing to say, I'm only going to allow you to give an answer that answers the question. So if I ask you about what's going on in Ukraine and you start telling me about healthcare in Wisconsin, we're going to cut your mic. Or we're going to say, time is up. Do we not have the capacity to do that anymore? I think a moderator should be a moderator. And if they're not answering the questions that the American people really have the right to know, if they're just going to talk around things, if everything's going to be this circuitous route to get to a non-answer of a specific question, then we're really just wasting our time, but really helping the major networks sell some advertising space. I don't think that's the job of a presidential debate. So we got to rethink all of that as we move into this. So the debates will be the first thing we're going to keep our eye on. International events, of course, are bubbling up in so many different ways. And then it's going to be a lot of the discipline on the ground. Who's got the right get out the vote structure and strategy in place to execute on Election Day? Where does the middle go? The independent voters, what are they listening for? Who are they listening to? Those are all things that we're going to track and keep you up to speed on as we march our way towards that first Tuesday of November. So lots to think about, lots to think again about what we think we know in a race that has been upside down and backwards, and yet here we are back at the beginning again. We'll help you navigate it all. Stay with us on KSL News Radio.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. This Friday.
At the 50, the 40.
It's BYU's first away game of the season.
Touchdown, Cougars! Rise and shout!
BYU, Southern Methodist University. Pre-game from Dallas starts at 3 with kickoff at 5. Make sure you're listening as you drive home on Utah's legacy home for the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
It's happening at pharmacies all across America. Older Americans keep asking, where are the lower prices on prescription drugs Joe Biden and Kamala Harris keep taking credit for? First, Harris cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, promising to lower drug prices. Then the Biden-Harris administration used the money from Medicare to bankroll their liberal green agenda. That's right. Instead of savings, seniors got a 20% premium increase, restrictions on access to medicine, and fewer cures. Now, liberals want to expand this Biden-Harris scheme that is already hurting seniors. Thankfully, Congressman Blake Moore has always fought to protect Medicare drug coverage. Call him at 202-224-3121. Urge him to keep fighting for affordable drug coverage by opposing H.R. 4895. Paid for by Seniors for Better Care.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates. This weekend only, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandswimspasale.com.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home, and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide. Because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
It is back to school time and a great time for you to set a good example for your kids.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to myself here too, because for years I used to eat, I was just addicted to chips and all kinds of other things that kept 40 extra pounds on me for most of my adult life. But then I started Soda Weight Loss, and I showed my kids you can eat healthy and still be happy, still eat the foods you like, and lose weight and be healthier. This is Nick.
If you stick with this program, I promise you will lose weight. And this is coming from somebody that I couldn't even barely walk when I started this. How many pounds I was carrying was hurting my knees and my back. I have to say that I'm a true believer of this.
I'm a true believer too, Tim.
Yeah, and so is my daughter who lost 42 pounds. It's so much more, and how many times have we said this, than just those numbers on the scale. The weight really keeps you from doing the things you want to do in life, and you're not as hungry either. Go to SodaWeightLoss.com right now. Click on the Request a Nutritionist callback, and within minutes, they'll be on the phone to get you started. SodaWeightLoss.com, spelled S-O-T-A, and it stands for State of the
Art.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah's 100 deadliest days of summer ended with 20 more highway deaths than the year before. Second, an anti-American youth group tried to beat up a couple of U.S. Marines at a port in Turkey. And third, we'll be seeing more wildfire smoke moving into Utah this week. 90 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
When a nation grappling with the challenge of creating pathways to the middle class without the burden of a four-year degree or often the student debt that goes with it, apprenticeships are emerging once again as a promising solution. The United States was really based and founded in its early days on that model of apprenticeship, and yet we've gotten so far away from that. And I think it's one of the untapped resources we have in this country that can create an extraordinary way up for many of our young people And Heather Long is an opinion columnist for the Washington Post, has a brilliant piece in the Post talking about how more young people can actually live the American dream. And the answer is pretty simple and actually connects to this whole idea of apprenticeships. And Heather, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's dive into this. I am a big-time fan of apprenticeship programs, and I think they do provide such an extraordinary path. But let's start with just kind of a lay of the land. Help our listeners understand what is it that we're actually doing when it comes to apprenticeship programs? What are some of the challenges or some of the barriers that have prevented this from being used more in our country?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest challenge in the United States is just this mindset shift that started in the 90s when many of the millennials were entering high school, and people were just preached to that you needed to go to college to be successful, that you needed that 4-year college degree. And we have seen a huge rise in people getting that 4-year college degree. But of course, not everyone wants that. Not everyone can afford that. And we just, as a nation, really abandoned other opportunities. So today, if you look at apprenticeships in America, what I wrote the piece on, we have about 640,000 people right now, right at this moment, in apprenticeships. And that's a drop in the bucket for an economy that has 160 million workers.
Yeah, no question about that. And I do think a lot of it is that stigma, as you suggested, that people are just looking at, oh, that's for someone who's just in the trades or someone who are in a certain occupation. I'll never forget being with a United States senator speaking to some law students. And there was a question and answer, and there was one student who was very full of himself, got up and, was spouting off all of his accomplishments, and he just passed the bar. And he said, Senator, what advice would you have for me? And the senator said, all of that preparation, all of your success has put you in a perfect position to be a fantastic apprentice at a law firm. But I thought that message was so important that to me, apprenticeship is about the most important skills that we learn. That's how to learn, the discipline of learning, and then the love of learning. That becomes part of that particular process. One of the other things you pointed out in your piece that I really loved is that we also have some of these barriers. Sometimes it's hard for businesses, especially small businesses who don't have a lot of extra staff. The red tape around those can sometimes be one of those inhibiting factors.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I did speak to several small and mid-sized companies, and the reality is, like many things in life, there's a lot of paperwork to start up an apprenticeship, even if a company wants to get this going. And so what a number of states have started to do, a lot of people point to South Carolina, which has had a lot of success in growing its apprenticeships. They actually give a $1,000 tax credit per apprentice, just to help ease a little bit of the burden. They also have set up a system with their South Carolina Technical College, so their network of community colleges. And so if you're a small business or a mid-sized business, you just go to your local community college and you say, look, I am interested in doing this. And they say, hey, here's a couple of programs that are already in place. We've got some online courses or some in-person courses. And so you, the business, just need to focus on what are the hands-on skills that this person could do while they're actually working at your company and earning, $20 to $25 an hour.
Yeah, and I think that whole idea of earning while you're learning and having that path, not only a good place to start, but a place that you can get some health insurance and some retirement and some of those kinds of things that are crucial. I also love that you put those 3 states together, California, Arkansas, and South Carolina. Not 3 states we typically couple together
exactly.
when it comes to a lot of things. And so you've said they've done some good things there, and yet even with that, no one's really cracking this in terms of getting a large number of potential workers or new workers into those kind of programs.
Yeah, that's right. It's still no state has more than 1% of their workers in a program like this. I actually looked up the Utah data since I knew we would be talking. So at the moment, Utah has just shy of 4,000 registered apprentices. That is up a lot from about 2,000 a decade ago, but it's barely 0.2% of the workforce. So a long way to go in Utah, like many, many states. A lot of it comes from governors, and you mentioned some Republican governors, Democratic governors have really embraced this and said, look, how can we break down those barriers, make the paperwork easier, maybe give a tax credit or another incentive. Another thing that's been really successful is a big push from a lot of states for youth apprenticeships, so trying to link up to high school programs. In my day in high school years ago, it was called VOTEC, vocational training. Now there's these far more sophisticated programs that can be implemented. And, all this starts to move the dial a little bit. And certainly a lot of young people are responding to it because they are so scared and just don't want to take on that level of college debt. They want a different pathway to a solid career.
Yeah, and I think that's the vital piece of that. They can actually catch a vision and say, wow, I can do that. I can see that path. I'm not going to be, making loan payments when I'm in my 40s and 50s. Yeah. They can see that real path there. And as you mentioned, and rightly so, pointing to the Biden administration wanting to grow that, there were some elements with semiconductors in the Inflation Reduction Act and a few other things. But in terms of really having this impact the culture and the way business gets done, the way we train up employees, we still got a long, long way to go. What are some of the other things that you're watching for in the years ahead that might give us a signal or might be part of the solution to really make this kind of transformation?
Yeah, I think a key one is moving beyond what we traditionally think of apprenticeships for. So most people, when they think about it, they're thinking about trades. They're thinking about becoming a plumber or a welder or an electrician. And those are definitely still great paths to a very solid career. We've all probably hired a plumber at some point in life, and those people make good money. But what I've seen in the last few years that's really encouraging is you're seeing companies like Google and IBM and Microsoft and JP Morgan Chase have all started apprenticeship programs, and then they've been so successful that many of those companies have actually grown their programs and looked for even more areas that they can take someone often right out of high school and say, look, we'll help you get your associate's degree or take a few classes online, but at the same time, what we really want you to do, is work in our company, often in like data center, data management type roles. And they're finding that these young people are really good workers and they're very loyal, unlike a lot of college degree kids who come in with a 4-year degree who are ready to run the place and ready to go to the next highest paying job. It's been great for the business and for a lot of these young people.
I love it. This is a really important conversation we need to be having more of across the country in our own communities in the halls of Congress. This is one we've got to get to. I think it holds so much. Heather Long, opinion columnist for the Washington Post. Check out her piece at thewashingtonpost.com. And this is a great way to help more young people actually live their own version of the American dream. Heather, thanks so much for joining us today. Fantastic perspective.
Thanks very much. Take care.
All right, that's Heather Long for the Washington Post, and I do think apprenticeships are a big part of the solution of what we need in the nation. We'll continue to have that conversation. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. Megan McArdle is going to join us coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, Compass Minerals has worked out a deal with the state of Utah to give up some of its water rights to help save the Great Salt Lake. It's giving up enough water every year under this deal to equal the capacity of Causey, Pineview, Echo, Lost Creek, and Rockport reservoirs combined. Compass Minerals has operated on the Great Salt Lake for more than 50 years. Our top national story this hour, Apple's newest software, iOS 18, rolling out this month, but it's expected to bring on a whole new set of issues. We have more from KSL News Radio's Alexandria Bonilla.
Tech and security experts are worried scams will ramp up with the new update. One major change will be made to users' Apple IDs. The term will be thrown out, and instead the company will move forward with the term Apple account. This provides scammers an opportunity to use the old term to confuse people and get information. The Better Business Bureau says scammers typically go for older people who are not great with technology.
An Apple ID or Apple account has access to extremely personal information like payment and contact information, as well as security details. Your money at the close of trading today, a big down day on Wall Street. NASDAQ down 577 points, 3.2%. The Dow down 626, about 1.5%. And S&P 500 down today 119 points. And our KSL weather, we're going to possibly see a thunderstorm this afternoon or evening. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back, I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you're always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health, Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at the Mountain America Expo Center, Thursday, September 12th through Sunday, September 15th. Come see new 2025 models and special closeout pricing on all 2024 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug in to your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit NPSstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. NPSstore.com.
Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is a serious heart condition. Some symptoms include being short of breath, feeling tired, or having dizziness or chest pain. My HCM impacted how I felt and what I could do. So I asked my cardiologist about treatment advances that gave me new options. That conversation was big for me. That's why I'm working with Bristol Myers Squibb to raise awareness about HCM and to help others like me. Talk to your cardiologist today and visit hcmrealtalk.com to learn more.
Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb.
Tommy! I can't wait for golf this weekend, huh, buddy? Time flies. Love you, man. Oh, don't forget your knee brace again. We aren't in college anymore.
Moments together matter, so help protect yourself from RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV, and there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Mark Christiansen.
Well, crews continue to remove the cars from the freeway, westbound I-80, 800 East. Both the right and left side of the freeway are affected here. Traffic a little bit slow and backed up to 1300 East. If you're in the greater North Ogden area, watch out for crews as they battle a fire on the right side of the freeway, southbound at 1800 North, and that has traffic backed up to about 12th Street in Ogden. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Partly cloudy with a high around 91 today, and that's where we are right now. There's a chance for thunderstorms this afternoon and evening, and we've got partly cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
In recent years, the idea of combating poverty through direct cash transfers has gained a lot of traction, promising a simple yet potentially revolutionary approach to improving lives. However, new research challenges the effectiveness of this strategy, revealing unexpected outcomes and limited benefits for the recipients themselves. And that's why it's so important for policymakers, for philanthropists to really grapple with all of this and to think again about what we think we know when it comes to helping people out of poverty or giving them that opportunity for upward mobility. As always, when we want to think again, we turn to Megan McArdle from the Washington Post. She has a fantastic opinion piece in the Post called "Cash Alone Proves Inadequate to Solve Problems of the Poor." And welcome back to the show. We just call her Miss Think Again, Megan McArdle. Megan, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, help us think again about what we think we know when it comes to helping the poor. Can't we just give lots of money and the world will be right and good?
Well, I mean, that had been the hope. But I think what we're seeing with these new studies that just came out is that that's maybe not going to work so well. So there were 3 studies that I looked at, or 3 groups of projects that I looked at, actually. Several of them released more than one paper, where they looked at, first of all, what happens if you forgive medical debt. You can buy medical debt, old medical debt, for pennies on the dollar, which this charity, formerly known as RIP Medical Debt, now Undo Medical Debt, does. There's another one that tried to give people just a chunk of cash, either $50, either $500 or $2,000, which was about 40% of the median household income in the study. And then the third study looked at a kind of universal basic income trial where they just provided people either a small amount of money a month or $1,000 a month to see, which again was a significant chunk of their income, to see how that would affect people. And the hope was, there's been a lot of studies that have said, a lot of theories that have said, look, poverty is grinding. It makes it impossible. Just having all these shortages just sucks all of your willpower, your attention, your cognitive capacity, your health. And that, of course, makes it harder to get out of poverty. So if we can close those holes, what happens? And in all 3 cases, the answer was not much. In fact, it didn't, people who got their debt forgiven were actually slightly higher, more likely to end up with more medical debt. They did not improve on measures of psychological well-being. In fact, the people with the most debt got more depressed, not a significant amount, but a little bit. Similarly, transferring cash to people just didn't solve the psychological issues of poverty. And the universal basic income study found that people sort of briefly reported better financial health. But when you looked at things like bankruptcies, foreclosures, et cetera, they were not more likely to be in better shape. They didn't improve on all of these other measures of well-being. And by the end of the study, even that temporary benefit of self-reported health had evaporated.
Yeah, and so as you break those down, the one that really caught my attention was that on the medical debt. They thought, okay, giving people a chance to just exhale a little bit, say, okay, I don't have to worry about that today. Maybe that would have some positive impact. But as you said, and as the study proved out, it really didn't change the trajectory of anything. They didn't turn around and invest that in a business or education or taking care of other things. And so, what is it amongst these 3 studies that is missing in this model of throwing some cash at the problem as opposed to some of the other things we might do to actually help people have that path towards upward mobility?
Of course, we'd like to know. We're not really sure. Researchers offered various theories of why that might not have helped. One possibility is, look, you have medical debt, it's probably because you're sick. And people who are sick have other issues, right? I mean, I think that's something that we probably see in all 3 studies, is that people who have these problems have other problems as well. And so they're not, getting that benefit precisely because they are people who are struggling in lots of ways. And of course, if you're struggling, you are more likely to become poor. And I think, it was obviously a very disappointing finding for people who had hoped that this would be it. But I think it just points us to the need. And, I've seen something like this at Welfare Square.
Yeah.
Where, they don't try to just give people money. They will give people money if that's the temporary problem. But what they really try to do is, how can we help you become self-sufficient? And so I think what this points to is that as we look for ways to deal with poverty, we're going to have to look for ways to do it more personally, to execute kind of hands-on, getting down there with people where they are and helping them figure out a lot more than just money.
Yeah, it is definitely that one-on-one. And sometimes we look at that and we think, oh, the one-on-one is so inefficient. And yet there are efficiencies within that you just can't replace.
Indeed.
And I thought it was fascinating, too, in your piece, Megan. You talked about those who were getting the kind of the universal basic income and what changed for them. And it was interesting to me that the one thing for sure that changed was consumption.
Yeah, their consumption went up. And look, we're not talking about, they were not like taking trips to Paris on $1,000 a month. They were spending more. They were slightly more likely, for example, to move neighborhoods. So they were spending more on housing. They were spending more on transportation. They were spending more on food. I don't want to make this sound like they were going out and blowing it on flat screen television. But what we also saw was that they worked less. It wasn't a ton less. It was about 1.5 hours a week. But of course, that's an average. There were people who, and they were not as people had hoped. Another hope was like, look, because this had always been the rejoinder to universal basic income is if you pay people, they won't work. And people said, well, maybe they'll do valuable care work, right? Maybe they'll take more care of their kids. Maybe they'll take more care of their parents. No, they spend it mostly on leisure. They have time. And that's not entirely not understandable, right? Like people like leisure. They don't like work. But I think it raises a real challenge, especially politically. If you want to do something like this, it's going to be hard to convince the taxpayer that as much as people like it, that we should be paying people to work less.
Yeah.
Because someone has to do the work to make that money.
That's right. Radical. The math always wins in this equation. We get that.
Sadly.
And so as you relate it to what's going on for lawmakers, for policy makers and shapers, even for institutions and organizations, whether they're faith-based, whether it's an NGO, what is it that you're looking for in terms of how do we do this in the future? These are some pretty clear results. And again, the math always wins and the results don't lie. What should we be thinking different or doing different as a result of what we learned from these three studies?
I think what we should be looking at is how do we actually work with people to help them get more stable, because that's really where the issue is. It's that people have a lot of issues that are making them unstable. And what we need to do is figure out how can we create solutions that emphasize that emphasize working with people who have a lot of problems and helping them actually fix the underlying problem rather than just trying to plug the cash holes that those problems cause. In the case of, medical debt, that might be, for example, making sure people have better health care, trying to get people access to the various preventative care services that would actually improve their lives more. But I think it is definitely very challenging, and we have to be realistic about that.
Yeah, and I do think it comes down to that whole idea that what people need, even more than they need access to funds and to cash, they need access to people and to networks of people that can help them on that upward trajectory.
Exactly.
As always, Megan McArdle from the Washington Post. You can check out her piece at thewashingtonpost.com. And Megan, thanks for helping us think again about what we think we know on a really crucial subject of how do we best help people. And while cash may be part of a very short-term solution, the longer-term solution is really in the one-by-one and how do you create that self-reliance path moving forward. Megan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Megan McArdle from the Washington Post. She's the best of the best. Great piece, a lot of great thinking, and a lot of fascinating, stunning results. When I read that this morning, I immediately texted Megan and said, we got to talk about this today. And she said, let's do it. And she's always great. And it gives us the perspective. We got to rethink about what it is that will be most helpful to people who are struggling. And it's not always the easy solution that we think it is. Sometimes it requires us to do some of the hard work stuff. It's not just throwing money at it, it's creating a path so that they can take care of it on their own. We'll be right back.
It's happening at pharmacies all across America. Older Americans keep asking, where are the lower prices on prescription drugs Joe Biden and Kamala Harris keep taking credit for? First, Harris cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, promising to lower drug prices. Then the Biden-Harris administration used the money from Medicare to bankroll their liberal green agenda. That's right. Instead of savings, seniors got a 20% premium increase, restrictions on access to medicine, and fewer cures. Now, liberals want to expand this Biden-Harris scheme that is already hurting seniors. Thankfully, Congressman Blake Moore has always fought to protect Medicare drug coverage. Call him at 202-224-3121. Urge him to keep fighting for affordable drug coverage by opposing H.R. 4895. Paid for by Seniors for Better Care.
Hi everyone, it's Congressman Blake Moore here. It's been a busy summer visiting communities and meeting with Utahns across the 1st District. My Ogden-based office has also enjoyed engaging with you at many local events. We're always grateful to connect with you. I'd love to continue hearing your thoughts on what is happening in Congress and how current issues impact you and your family, from inflation to border security and everything in between. Please join me for my next telephone town hall on Thursday, September 5th at 12 p.m. by dialing in at 833-305-1678. That's 833-305-1678 on Thursday, September 5th at 12 p.m. Due to U.S. law, I will be unable to communicate with constituents 60 days leading up to the general election unless you are subscribed to our weekly e-newsletter and follow us on social media. So be sure to subscribe and follow today. You can sign up for our e-newsletter at blakemore.house.gov and follow along on social media at Rep. Blake Moore. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you on September 5th. Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Tommy! I can't wait for golf this weekend, huh, buddy? Time flies. Love you, man. Oh, don't forget your knee brace again. We aren't in college anymore.
Moments together matter, so help protect yourself from RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV, and there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, debunking 3 myths about fiduciaries, and you're going to be surprised about myth number 3. Myth number 1, fiduciaries are too expensive. Not at Trajan Wealth. Our interests are aligned with yours, so we don't need to push costly investments. The more you make, the more we make. It's that simple. Myth number 2, they will only want to sell me something. Absolutely not. At Trajan Wealth, we have hearts of teachers, and it's our goal to educate and empower, not sell. And the biggest myth, myth number 3, fiduciaries are only for the wealthy. Not at Trajan Wealth. Whether you have 50 grand or 50 million, we know it was hard-earned and we'll treat it as such. Let's grow together. So, here's your opportunity for 100% complimentary professional Q&A. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
None of these 7 people scored the winning touchdown in last year's championship game. None have gone into space or gone on tour with Taylor Swift. Yet 7 special people in the community deserve your attention. And September 7th at the Utah Valley Convention Center, starting at 6 p.m., you can give it to them. Join Community Action Services and Food Bank in celebrating the contributions of 7 extraordinary members of the community. Then see the premiere of the Food and More Store, a pop-up giving experience you can only experience at this event. Plus, you'll have the chance to peek inside their new mobile food pantry. Dinner, live music, entertainment. Get details now on how you can be a part of this exceptional community night. Visit casfb.org and learn more about the evening, the individuals being honored, and how to be there to take it all in. casfb.org. Community Action Services and Food Bank, providing food and more to neighbors in need in Wasatch, Summit, and Utah counties.
Nearly 70% of Utah's land is controlled by the federal government, severely limiting Utah's ability to actively manage and protect our natural resources. Our families, businesses, and communities know there's a better way. Utahns have been good stewards of our public lands for generations. That's why we're asking each and every Utahn to get informed, speak up, and learn more at standforourland.utah.gov.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the big differences, I think, between reading a story online and hearing it from us, Tim, is that, you and I are allowed to share a reaction. We need to be able to say, what in the world were they thinking? So that people listening will know. We feel it too. When we read a story that sounds ridiculous, we're right with you. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, we get caught up, I'm sure just like our listeners do sometimes, in death scrolling on social media. And fact-checking it on your own is tough. The great thing about tuning in every morning and starting your morning with us on KSL is you can count on the fact that when that information comes out of the radio in your direction, it comes from reliable sources.
It's already been fact-checked.
Right. And that's not always easy when you're getting it online. Finding who wrote it, when was it written, has it been updated with the current facts of the day that change sometimes minute to minute, not just day to day.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, one of the big companies that extracts minerals from the Great Salt Lake has struck a deal with the state to give up some of its water rights. Second, the difference between an Apple ID and an Apple account is something that scammers could take advantage of. And third, police say gangs in Utah are recruiting younger and younger teens. 91 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. I'm Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, if you missed anything along the way, you definitely want to go back and check out the podcast. Just go to kslpodcast.com. We actually post each of the individual segments of the show as a podcast. So you'll have about 10, 12 minutes to get into the meat of an issue, figure out ways that you can think again about what you think you know. And we've had some extraordinary guests on the program today. Of course, we kicked off with Mary Trimble joining us from our friends over at the Dispatch, talking about what's going on in the Middle East from a geopolitical perspective. And then Rabbi Avrami Zippel followed that with a real personal look in terms of human lives and dignity as it relates to these kinds of atrocities. And what happens when you change the headline from something very far away and make it very close to home. And that makes it real. That makes it personal. And sometimes it's very easy for us in the comfort of the United States of America to distance ourselves from the reality of some of the challenges that are going on. And it's important for us to rethink that and lean into it. We also talked about gridlock, and as our big announcement of the day following Labor Day, we have confirmed once again that without fail, September the 30th will come this year. It is coming, as it always does. And that is the date, of course, by which Congress is supposed to fund the government to avoid a government shutdown. And so here we are on the 3rd of September, 27 days to go. And we'll see a lot of back and forth, a lot of fake fights, a lot of false choice, a lot of shutdown, showdown talk. And ultimately, as we get close to the 30th, Congress will kick the proverbial can down the road with a continuing resolution that will at least get past the election, because no one wants to be in Washington, D.C. If you're a member of the House, you're up for election. Everybody, all 435, are up for re-election. They want to be home campaigning so they can win their seat again to, do the job they're elected to do, which is Fund the government. It's one of the very few things in there. So we'll continue to break all that down, of course, as we roll through the next 27 days until September 30th proves once again that it comes every year. Congress should note that in the file and then act accordingly. We also had a fantastic conversation with Heather Long from the Washington Post about apprenticeship programs and how we've got to get back to that in this country. There's so much power in that. And yet, even in a state like Utah, Utah's made some great progress when it comes to apprenticeship programs, making it easier, less burdensome for small businesses or medium-sized businesses to navigate that and the paperwork that's required. But still, we only have about 0.2% of our workforce in apprenticeship kinds of programs. So we can clearly do more. Even the states that are doing really well aren't even getting to 1%. And I think apprenticeship is so important, mostly because it sets you on a path of lifelong learning, whatever your profession is. And we need a lot more of that in the country. And then, of course, just in our last segment, we talked to Megan McArdle, also from the Washington Post, about some of these programs. 3 distinct studies have come out just within the last 3 weeks, talking about what happens when you put in money to solve specific problems. So there were 3 particular studies. One was about those who carry a lot of medical debt, and going in, and this 501c3 organization would go in and buy up the debt and then forgive it, and what changes. And the answer is not a whole lot. There were also studies around basic universal income and what that did. Not a lot in the end. And so what we have to do is start looking at things not as let's just throw more money at it. It could be part of the solution. It can be part of just, stopping the holes in the boat. But you got to build a better boat. If you really want people to have self-reliance and upward mobility and community, it's not just about connecting them to cash or to those basic monetary pieces. It's about connecting them to people and networks of people. That's how upward mobility really takes place. Now, we do that pretty well here in the state of Utah, probably better than anywhere in the world. That somebody who's in poverty here or falls into poverty here has a better chance of not just getting out of poverty, but getting into the middle class and into their own version of their American dream. We do that really well. But it's not because we hand out a lot of dollars. It's because we hand out a lot of connections and that interconnectedness that puts someone into community, that helps them build a network of people. That's what actually builds that bridge towards becoming self-reliant and sustainable and a valued member of the community. So there's a lot of Utah model in there, to be sure. And I love that Megan McArdle even pointed out on one of her visits to the Beehive State that she went to Welfare Square and was so impressed with what she saw in terms of that path towards self-reliance and upward mobility. So a lot to think about there. Well, that wraps it up for us on a Monday here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. 86 degrees, KSL's top story. The investigation continues at a convenience store in Lehigh. That's the site where an 8-year-old boy found mom's gun in the car and accidentally shot himself in the head. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has the latest.
Lehigh police have confirmed the young boy passed away this morning at the hospital.
We are announcing the passing of an 8-year-old male who was accidentally wounded by a firearm.
Communications manager Chantel Livingston said they do believe it was an accident. And it was both officers nearby and witnesses in the parking lot who tried to do what they could to save him.
So they answered the call very quickly, and also life-saving measures were made by bystanders.
This incident marks